Emperor Marcus Aurelius was pretty much the most overworked guy in the ancient world. He was running an empire that stretched from Britain to Egypt. He dealt with plagues, famines, wars with the Germanic tribes, with the Parthians, with the Jews, and yet he managed to be remarkably serene. In fact, there's not a single surviving record of him ever losing his temper. Even when his son Commodus, who we might go as far as calling him the world's greatest tool, murdered his own half-sister so that he could inherit the throne, Marcus Aurelius didn't lose his cool. Instead, according to the historian Cassius Dio, he responded with a single tear rolling down his cheek. How did he do it? How did he remain so centered and focused and calm when all around him were freaking out? The answer, as always with Stoicism, is in the morning and evening routines. In this episode of the Obstacle is the Way podcast, we're going to talk about how even emperors get burned out. We're going to talk about what happens when someone is so overworked that they actually set their house on fire. And then we're going to close by talking about a 5-minute Stoic morning routine that you can use to deal with any kind of stress or burnout in your life. All right, let's get into it. When we think of burnout, we often imagine ourselves in some hot, miserable place. And while yes, that does play a role, like it gets hard to get out of bed. You feel awful, you're trapped. That's not where the problem starts. In fact, the real problem begins long before that. It begins with the first small resentments, the little annoyances that pile up and compound until you snap. Maybe it's your boss breathing down your neck every hour, or your coworker who won't stop eating at your desk, or the project that you have to finish, but you do and have the resources for. Now most people, when they feel these initial sparks of irritation, they ignore them. They tell themselves, I'll deal with that later. But by doing so, they only allow the flames to grow higher. Before they know it, they're overwhelmed, they're ineffective, they're burnt out. So Marcus Aurelius, who of course wrote the Meditations, which is one of my favorite books, obviously I've read it a bunch of times, but he also wrote a book called The Philosophy of a Stoic. He wrote it in a letter to his son. And in it, he talks about this process and he says, when you wake up in the morning, here's what you got to do. You got to look over the day, the entire day. You got to visualize it. You got to see the things that are going to happen, and you got to prepare yourself to confront them stoically, so that when the moment arrives, you're ready. This is such a beautiful idea because it flips the script on our feelings of being overwhelmed. See, when we're burned out, we feel overwhelmed, like there's no way I can get through this. And what he's saying is, look, if you think about it now, if you prepare now, if you plan for it now, then when it hits, it won't catch you off guard. You won't be confused or distracted or overwhelmed. Instead, you'll be ready. You'll be prepared. You'll be able to meet it head on. And that's exactly what a Stoic is supposed to do. You have to practice premeditations, as he says, and the best time to do that is the morning when things are quiet, when you're alone. When you have some coffee, when you have some breakfast, when you're getting ready for the day, you need to look over the day, visualize it, prepare yourself. That way, when the inevitable problems come your way, you're ready. This is why I love the Stoics so much. They talk about these abstract, timeless concepts like indifference to externals, and focusing on what you can control and not being overwhelmed by what you can't. But they also had very practical techniques that you can deploy right away, now, and this is one of them. It's such a simple thing, but so powerful. Look over the day, visualize it, prepare yourself. But that's just the beginning. At the end of the day, after you've done your best to apply this practice, after you've visualized the day, after you've gotten through it, you want to sit down for a few minutes and reflect on it. Marcus Aurelius said you should ask yourself, how did I do today? Did I do my best? Was I indifferent to things I couldn't control? Was I focused on the things I could? Was I calm when things didn't go my way? See, when you get to the end of the day, it's easy to just want to decompress, watch some TV, go to sleep, put it all behind you, and move on to tomorrow. But instead, Marcus Aurelius said you should take a few minutes to detach from it. You should take a few minutes to assess it, and you should take a few minutes to improve from it. Because if you don't take the time to reflect and refine, then what's the point of doing it in the first place? What's interesting is this is something that modern science is only just catching up to. There's this incredible research on neuroplasticity, basically the idea that our brains change in response to experiences and behaviors. And what they found is that when you ruminate over negative experiences, you reinforce those patterns in your brain. In other words, you make it harder and harder to break free of them. On the other hand, when you take the time to detach and reflect and refocus, you change the patterns in your brain. You become more resilient. You become more flexible. You're better able to cope with whatever comes next. This is why every night before I go to sleep, I sit down and I journal. I write down 3 things that went well that day, 3 things that didn't go so well that day, and then I reflect on them. Sometimes I go through them out loud. Sometimes I say them to somebody. But either way, I take the time to detach from the events of the day and reattach myself to them in a new way. And I do this because the Stoics were right, because Marcus Aurelius was right. I know that if I don't do this, if I don't take the time to reflect and refocus, then it's going to be harder and harder to do it tomorrow. A couple of years ago, I read this unbelievable story about Seneca, and how one time Nero assigned him this massive project, like rebuild Rome, which was a disaster waiting to happen. And Seneca, knowing this, knowing it was basically impossible, still didn't say yes, but he didn't say no either. Instead, he laughed. And he says, well, would you look at that? It looks like we re-gone, now have to set Rome on fire in order to get it rebuilt. What he was doing there, of course, is practicing this idea of premeditations. He wasn't trying to figure out how to complete this task. He was trying to figure out how to fail forward on it, how to make the best of it, how to learn from it. And that's what a Stoic does. If you're feeling stuck or overwhelmed or burned out, ask yourself, am I approaching this as a test or as a burden? Because when you see everything as a test, everything changes. Everything becomes an opportunity to prove yourself, to demonstrate your virtue, to build character. And all of a sudden, instead of feeling overwhelmed, you feel excited, you feel energized, you feel like this is exactly what I was meant to do. If you're looking for a challenge, if you want to push yourself, if you want to prove yourself, if you want to become a better version of you, then what you have to do is work. But not just work. You have to work on something difficult, something that stretches you, something that helps you grow. In other words, you have to work on yourself. That's the ultimate form of work. That's the ultimate challenge. That's the ultimate test. And that's exactly what a Stoic is always striving for. And if you want to know how to approach it, how to think about it, how to work on yourself, that's what you can find in the Stoic philosophy. I'm going to leave you with 2 ideas. First, I'm going to give you a 5-minute Stoic morning routine that you can use to visualize the day ahead of you. Second, I'm going to give you a couple of strategies for dealing with toxic coworkers and overwork, which is always a challenge in this day and age. So with that, let's jump in. All right, here's what a Stoic morning routine looks like. 5 minutes, that's all it takes. No, 1, I drink a big glass of water. Why? Because I have to remind myself that I'm alive. I have to activate my body. I have to wake up and be present. No. 2, I think about 3 good things. This is the happiest moment of the day, the calmest moment of the day. So I have to make the most of it. I have to choose wisely what I focus on. So I think of 3 good things. Could be a great book I'm reading, could be a movie I watched, could be a nice text message from a friend. Doesn't matter what it is, but I have to think of 3 things I'm grateful for. No. 3, I think about 1 bad thing. There's always going to be something annoying me. there's always going to be something irritating me. And if I don't acknowledge it now, it's just going to grow throughout the day. So instead I think about it, I recognize it. I tell myself this is annoying, this is frustrating, this is challenging. But then I also tell myself, this too shall pass. And I imagine that person who's annoying me. I imagine that situation that's irritating me. I imagine that task that's challenging me, and I imagine them in a positive light. I imagine them doing their best. I imagine them trying. I imagine them growing. And this is a weird one. No. 4. I pretend that today is my last day alive. If today was my last day alive, how would I spend it? Who would I call? What would I do? What would I focus on? Where would I go? And then I tell myself, well, it's not your last day alive, but you have to treat it that way. You have to live it that way. You have to cherish it that way. You have to make the most of it that way. That's a 5-minute Stoic morning routine. Again, doesn't take that long, but it makes all the difference. As always, if you want to learn more about Stoic philosophy, check out the website below. If you enjoyed this episode, please hit the subscribe button. It makes a huge difference. Thank you so much for listening. Thank you so much for subscribing. And I'll see you next week.